All right, so let's see what we got here. Yesterday we did dad advice and had fun with that, so I thought I'd come back and do more dad advice today. And we can chat about whatever you guys want to talk about that you'd like advice from a dad. And I'll be happy to give dad advice, which is worth just that, what you paid for it, considering it's free. Hopefully it'll be of value to somebody. I can touch one person in a impactful way today. That's my goal. Just hit one person a day and help them on their path, like so many people from before have helped me on my path, and give back to the overall community, which is the entire world. So, no viewers yet. What should I talk to in the interim? Here's the thing about advice is that where do we go with advice? If the first thing I would encourage any questions, if you guys have any questions, because that's really what I'm here to do, is speak to any particular questions you might have about, hey, what's life going to be like in 10 years or 20 years, or I probably can't get past 20 years for the average Redditor, but, just to give that insight to, perhaps give a path that you might not have thought of taking, or give some thought to something that, you just want some additional thought about. So please, I encourage questions like last time I did it, and I'll just try to speak to whatever you're looking for advice in your particular world at this time. So Bridges M. So you know what? I don't know if it's me or not, right? That's the thing about being a dad. I mean, I don't really know your ma, right? So, but I'll be your foster dad for the next 40 minutes or so, if you got questions you want to chat about. How do you deal with anger at siblings? Friendly manic. I tell you what, in the more detail that you can throw out there, the better I can kind of, focus, because, right, in any type of question, there's so many different, perspectives that you can bring into it, that if you want real advice, the more detail that you can provide, the better. How do you deal with anger at siblings? So let's talk about anger first, right? And then we can look at anger with siblings specifically after that, because I don't know if it's unique specifically. So what is anger, really? What is anger? Anger's hurt. Anger comes from a place of hurt where, somehow we feel we don't have control. That's what anger is, in a nutshell. And there's more definitions of anger, but in my experience, that's when we get angry, is when somehow we feel we're losing control, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's how we can respond. So, anger at siblings, that's a tough one, man. I'm sorry. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that. Because it's, at the end of the day, we only get one family, and it's a real blessing when we have an awesome family, and it really sucks when we don't have an awesome family. So I'm sorry, first of all, that you don't have a family that, siblings at least, that really fit well with you and your personality. So how do we deal with anger in general, right? I think is maybe we can look at that a little bit more broadly, and ask the question of, how do we want to approach anger in our life? And the first thing I would say is, you kind of know yourself. Are you an angry person, right? Is there something underlying that anger that, just starts, just in general, you're angry at the world. Some people are angry at the world. You meet them and there's just they're just out of control. So the first thing is to recognize, is it really, when it comes to anger, is there an opportunity to work on anger in general in your life, which, hopefully you want to live in peace, right? I think that's what we all want. We want to live with a peaceful heart and have the experience of a peaceful life. So anger holds us back from that, right? Because anger puts us out of that mindset of of peace, and we're always just in that negative mindset as opposed to, closer to a positive mindset. Look, and when it comes to siblings, I think you have to talk, right? I mean, it's all about communication in any relationship, right? So we have all these different relationships in our lives. It can be parents, siblings, significant others, kids, and then, teachers, friends. And these are all relationships, and we're not in control of anybody. The only person we're in control of is ourselves. And understanding that the only person that you can control is yourself, and your reaction, that's all you can control. So, the first thing is just really understanding and seeing the other person as a person and understanding their perspective. So sometimes if you can, understand them better, you can have less anger at them. So, if you can put yourself in their shoes. So you can try that experiment. Try, if you're someone you're angry at, try literally enter into their mindset and try to take their perspective in the conversation and see if that doesn't help bridge the gap a little bit in terms of that anger. So let's run with that as a one direction, not the direction, or but a direction, and hopefully that could be of some value. Just putting yourself in their shoes and your siblings' shoes, and approaching, and do it do it away from them, and see if somehow that opens your heart a little bit to have a little less anger at them. And I hope that's helpful. Let's see what else we got here. How'd you got your wife? I don't have a wife anymore. I was once married. I don't have a wife now. But I think like most people, and first of all, you don't, and I was gonna say you don't get a wife, but you don't get anybody in life. That's important. We don't own anybody. Always know that. No one owes you anything, really. It's just an important perspective. But that's well. And again, I probably should just kind of joke at some of these. But anyway, how much does life change after you have kids? Absolutely, life changes. It's fundamentally different. I think you'll find in general that and I've even as I'm as I've dated as a dad, noticed that there's a fundamental change in a person when they have a kid, and it's hard to put that into perspective. In general though, any change that a person has, any experience that a person has, makes them who they are, right? So that's what life is. Our experiences are the foundation of who we are, and we change with our experiences, and we become different people. So, and it was a question, how much does life change? Look, life changes as much as you let it change, right? So you can have kids and ignore them, and life probably doesn't change that much. But you can, have kids and choose to be engaged and with them, and then life fundamentally changes. So it's, to a large extent, you're in control of that. But it's a fundamental change. You're responsible for another person. You're responsible for, at least for me, was, look, I brought this person in the world, and, I want to, give them the opportunity to enjoy the world. And so that means provide for them financially, give them a safe place to live, and food and clothing and emotional support, right? Which is the biggest part. That's the hardest part probably in many ways, is really being there for somebody emotionally and fulfilling their needs emotionally. And when they're young, it's a lot of hands-on stuff. So, I definitely think that life changes fundamentally when you have kids. There's an internal shift. There's physical stuff that has to happen as well. But I will also tell you it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. By far. I mean, there's nothing that compares to the experience I've had of kids that I've ever done. And I've done a lot of stuff in my life, and had a lot of different experiences, and there's nothing quite like it. And a big part of that also is kind of understanding that you've created a little person, like not like a little person like in your image, but like a person, like you've brought one of you into the world, which is a really profound thought. And to have that opportunity to, see them grow, it also allows you to understand yourself better, especially, as you see them going through the maturation process. You actually learn a lot about yourself in terms of your own maturation process. So yeah, it's awesome, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's the most meaningful thing I've ever done. And I would just say that the main thing to tell people is that don't assume just because society says to have kids, you should have kids. It should be a decision you make when you're ready for kids. Because there is a lot of, I think, societal pressure that the only way to live is to have kids. And that's not true at all. We get to choose what we want our life to look like. And that reminds me, I was going to just mention this, that I think is kind of a key dad advice, is that, I think a lot of us have feelings that we're not enough, and that can come out in a lot of different ways, like that I'm not enough, or that I'm bad, or people don't like me, and all these negative kind of false beliefs. And I want to, as your dad for the next 30 minutes, I want to throw out there that you are enough, and that nothing can hold you back, and you can do anything that you want. And I think that's a really empowering thought, and I think it's true. Like, I don't think you should ever tell someone something that's not true. Is that we have potential for anything we want in this world, and so grab it and run with it, is my real advice, and realize that you're enough. If you're here and lucky enough to be in this world, own that, and own that fact, and make it a better place for somebody else, and in doing so, you'll make it better for yourself as well. So let's see what else we got here. Question was, oh boy, we got a whole bunch of stuff. Do I like hot moms? I like that one. Yeah, who doesn't like hot moms? And I told my kid about this, so it's a little embarrassing now. It's like, I'd be, but the truth is, and I do try to do this. I try not to say anything that I wouldn't want my kids to hear. So, but I did tell them I did this yesterday, and I showed them where it was. So that could be interesting. You're welcome. Having a great day. Yes, I'm having a fabulous day. I'm sitting outside. It is just gorgeous out here. I got birds everywhere, and not too hot where I am. I'm in Atlanta. The shade is probably 72 to 75 Fahrenheit, and I'm having a fabulous day. I get to connect with some cool people on the internet, and which I find meaningful, and got a nice iced coffee that is quite nice. It's about as good as it gets. Let's be honest. It's about as good as it gets. Thanks for the kind words, Dollar Brawler. Do I find it hard to make friends as an adult? Okay, let's talk to that. Let's talk about making friends. If not, any advice for an introverted person with no friends? So, so let's talk about making friends. So yeah, I think as an adult it's harder to make friends. I think the easiest time in my life I've ever had to make friends was a dorm environment. And that's just because there's so many people around. And, if you think about it, friends, in general, we connect with people over doing interesting things, and connected experiences, right? I mean, there are studies that show that, like psychological studies and stuff like that. That's like the nature of how friendships kind of develop. And, I think it's harder. There's two things involved. So I think guys have a harder time making friends than girls do. I think that, that's one thing that, I think girls are more open naturally, less competitive in a certain way, right? There's definitely competition around women, but it's a different kind of competition around men in terms of, but either way, the point is, I think that women are better communicators, and not necessarily naturally, but this is kind of through evolutionary forces, where we are today, and so we have to change ourselves to get out of some of these natural things. But yeah, so a couple things come to mind. One is, that I think as a guy, we have a naturally harder time making friends that we have to overcome. And then second of all, I think as we get older, it's harder just to make friends because it's harder to do things like together with other people. And friendships take time, right? So you got two kind of spectrums. You got a time spectrum where you got to spend time with people over a period of time, right? So you can't just snap your finger and have a friend. And then you have to also, to really have a friend and not an acquaintance, you have to open your heart to them and make yourself vulnerable. And for some people, that's pretty tough. So, I don't know that introvert or extrovert. In my mind, I'm kind of an introvert. I'm a salesman who's an introvert, which is kind of weird, but we're all on the spectrum. Right? It's some more dad advice. We're all on a spectrum, right? And there's no right or wrong on that spectrum. You just find yourself on the spectrum and understand it's a spectrum. So we're all on the spectrum of introverted and extroverted. And I understand what you mean, like that if you're really a true introvert, it's really uncomfortable to go out and make friends. But you don't even have to go out and make friends. You can do it online now and slowly get out of things. And some of that could be social anxiety. You might want to look into that if you haven't looked into social anxiety and kind of understood what that's all about. And some of us have this voice in our head that's saying, hey, people are judging us, and recognize that everybody has a very different voice in their head, and that the voice that you have is not the voice that the next person has. So, I would say as an introvert, the first thing is just kind of maybe look into social anxiety and see if that's kind of really what it is, not so much the introvert versus the extrovert aspect of self, but there's some fear of putting yourself out there because you're afraid that, who knows what you're afraid of, right? You're afraid of being rejected, afraid of being embarrassed. There are a lot of things that when it comes to social environments, we can, be anxious about. There's no limit to the anxieties especially of the smart mind, right? Smart minds create anxieties. So, yeah. So good. Let's keep going. Let's see what else we got here. Oh boy, got a whole bunch of stuff here. Well, thank you for the awesome answer, ZeneBean17. And that's where I am. I'm just running down kind of some of the comments here. Feeling of inadequacy. Hey, look, here's the thing. Here's the thing I want everybody to understand, is that we all have feelings of inadequacy. And the reason I think why we all have that is that we see the world, it's almost like imposter syndrome, right? Are you guys familiar with that concept, right? Where you go to a job and you're like, let's say, you get your first day on the job after graduating from school, and you get there and you're like, I don't know shit, right? And the reality is that you do, but you don't realize that you do. And so there's this natural imposter syndrome that I think that people have in the world. So I would just tell you that at the end of the day, everybody has feelings of inadequacy. First of all, they might not know that they have it. Some people aren't even in touch with that feeling. But the first thing you can do is, if you can dig deep and find that feeling inside you and create awareness around it, you can actually really get rid of it. Not 100%, something I've been working on my whole life, but 80%, 90%. And then it's not like a demon that's chasing you around anymore, and really can help you with some happiness. So, let's see what else we got here. And just since I guess there are a couple more people here, thank you all for joining. So let's see what we got here. Hey, but straight up, sometimes people don't like you, and you should consider why. And it just shifted on me. and thinking about changing if it's important to you. Absolutely. You know, here's the thing, is that not everyone's going to like you. And the fact is that, you know, you can't necessarily change that. And frankly, you know, we wouldn't want to live in a world where we're all the same. That wouldn't create a lot of opportunity for us, would it? Right? There, you know, the one thing about the world is that there's always opportunity to change and become a different person and go in a different path. But if we were all of the same mind, we'd all be the same. We'd all just be robots. So you can actually even appreciate the fact that there are people that don't like you in this world, and not take it personally, because it's not personal. It's all about them and their likes. And that's one of those, actually, it's a really good book. I'd recommend. Ruiz, I think is the last guy's name, R-U-I-Z. You know, he talks about the 4 principles or the 4 truths or something like that. And one of them is don't take it personally. And I'm sure other people talk to this stuff too, but it's just so important to realize, you know, you can have, you know, you can't make everybody happy, right? You just can't. So to some extent, you just don't even try. And it doesn't mean to be a dick, right? It means be a good person. But, you know, some people, no matter how good you are, they won't like you just because they're bitter. And, you know, you just got to let them be, and you can feel sorry for them, right? You can take that opportunity to feel sorry for that person that has so much anger in their heart. But definitely don't take it personal, because it's not about you. It's about them, their whole life experience that got them to that point that they're not cool with you. Okay, let's keep going. I got a bunch of stuff here. Every time I go up, it jumps on me. You know what? I guess I'll take some stuff from the bottom here and work my way up. Any stock advice? My advice for stock advice would be, don't listen to people because they don't really know anything. That would be my general advice. Is that, you know, invest in the broad market. I'm a broad market kind of guy. That was my degree in finance. I had a professor once tell me, when you're in, you're in. When you're out, you're out. And we're all out. So, you know, I'd say invest. You know, make sure you guys have savings. I think that's key. You know, save 20% of your income. Just make that the goal. 20%. Stick it in index funds and just watch it grow over 40, 50 years and watch what happens. It can be quite impressive and give you some real security when the bad things in life happen, which they will, because bad things in life do happen, or hard things, not necessarily bad things. So, all right, let's see what else we got. I've been dating, let's go. Need dad advice. I have a date coming up with an older woman. I'm 16. How should I conduct myself? So, you know what, I'm going to skip that one just because I don't know the age of consent where you are and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm gonna have to pass on that, my friend. Any tips for talking to girls? Just do it. Just do it. You know, here's the thing. You know, it's kind of funny, but you know, and it goes back to that feeling of weakness, right? And we'll go back. We can go back and talk about some of these things you guys raised questions and stuff on some of the stuff we talked about. But you know, look, when I was younger in high school, I was just like oblivious that there were people that liked me. And I now know that there were those people out there. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of missed opportunities. So, you know, and again, that's gonna go back to some social anxiety, some being willing to be rejected. Don't take yourself so seriously. And by the way, I'm talking to myself now, because that's really hard, not to take yourself seriously. That's really hard. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we are. We're all ego. We're all ego. And we got to get out of that. That's the goal. That's the goal. One of the main goals, I think, of life is really getting comfortable with yourself, and letting your ego down. And that's a hard thing to do. So, all right. Let's see what else we got here. Paycheck to paycheck. I get it, man. I do get it. That's a hard place to be. That's a really hard place to be. How to save better. Let's talk about budgeting. Let's talk about minimalistic lifestyles. Let's talk about living cheap. And look, again, there's definitely outliers here, right? And so I can't really speak, look, a lot of people are struggling with funds. But here's the thing about this, and this is where I get a little bit of a challenge, is that everybody struggles with money. Like everybody. Like, that's just the nature of money, is that, everyone struggles with it. It doesn't matter, where you are in that, in the earning potential. People just aren't really good with money. So the first thing I would just say is, it's all about a budget, and working backwards. I mean, I'm wearing I think a $7 t-shirt right now. There's cheap stuff out there, if you don't need to necessarily impress your friends, right? And you can live according to your own heart. So that would be the first thing I would just encourage is, really live within your means. And what that means is create a budget, figure out what your income is, and then say 20% is going to savings. So that leaves you 80%. And then you just got to work out, you got to go backwards from there. What are going to be, what are your priorities, right? Money is an enabler. It's all it is, right? We call it a person's net worth, which is kind of ironic because it's absolutely not a person's net worth. Money is absolutely not a person's net worth. It's the absolute opposite. But I mention it because society says, what's a person's net worth? What's a person worth? It's not what a person's worth, right? So I want you to understand the insipid, poison in society around money. And don't get me wrong, I like money. I'm a money guy. But I think it's important to recognize the truths that are around us that we might not be paying attention to, so we can, be aware of them and create change for it. So it's all about really creating that budget, prioritizing where your spending's going, and tracking your spending, and making sure you stay, disciplined. And it is a discipline game. There's no other way to say it. But that's the only way to do it, is to work backwards. And don't keep up with the Joneses. Don't compare yourself to other people in any way, right? That's just a bad way to make yourself happy, is start comparing yourself. You just will find a lot of negativity coming from that internally, and then making yourself struggle for no good reason, because so much of society is societal pressure, right? So much of what we're encouraged to do is because society has decided it's good, but it's not necessarily good. You need to decide for yourself if that's good or not. All right, let's do some more dad advice. So we got here. So if I hold it, it will. I like the text. This is fun stuff here. How important is college? We can talk about that a little bit. How important is college? Well, here's the thing with college, and I think it's and it's one of these things where I think society hasn't necessarily caught up with reality. And it has to do with the cost of college, if I'm honest. And it depends, there's so how important is college? Here's what's important in life, from my perspective. Knowledge is important in life. Curiosity is important in life. College is a functional thing, right? College is about a degree, right? Because some employers are looking for a degree. College is about an experience of leaving the house for the first time in a safe environment and exploring yourself. But I think the struggle for me with modern day college is that I think a lot of people end up taking out a lot of money and a lot of loans for degrees that don't necessarily support that, and they get themselves stuck. So I think you have to ask yourself what you want to do with your life, and you got to figure out a way to make college as cheap as possible. So look, I think college is really important, like I said, for the social aspect, for the opportunity to learn about a bunch of different things, and then also because employers are going to be looking for it. But I think the main advice I would give is don't burden yourself financially in the process. and figure out a way to get that degree without taking on the debt. Because I think, debt's like like how the prisoners had the balls like around their, or ball and chain kind of situation. So debt does that because, it keeps growing, right? And once it's on you, it's going to keep going up. So, so my advice there would be, really try to get yourself in a situation, if that means community college, if it means, trying to get yourself in a place where you can get almost free tuition. It's not, and if like you're an art student going to like one of these expensive art schools, like think about that, really think about that. So anyway, I gotta go there. All right. So let's see what else we got here. There are all kinds of interesting stuff in the comments. I'll let you guys talk amongst yourself. How important is father-son bonding time during the early years, 4 to 12? I mean, I think father-son bonding time, I mean, relationships are what we put into it. So, look, from a kid's perspective, it's absolutely imperative. I think, I would say about 5 or 6 is probably where it really gets important. And then it continues till they don't need it anymore. And that's from the perspective of the kid. From the perspective of the parent, it's like any relationship. If you don't put time into it, it dissipates. Now, there's a natural bond between a parent and a child, obviously, because of all that they've given, right? And giving makes a bond, and shared experience makes a bond. Look, so it's obviously it's important, and it's very important, and frankly, why have kids if you're not going to spend time with them? I mean, like, what's the point of that, really? Just to kind of have another you in the world, so absolutely important. My answers are perfect. Well, thank you very much. So these are just things I've learned, right? At the end of the day, and I'm definitely someone who's spent a lot of time thinking, and that's why, like, to really to have, the opportunity to share some of this wisdom is meaningful to me because I have put so much time into thinking about the world. It's almost an obsession for me, one which, borders on, almost an unhealthy place, which I have to keep in check. So, and it's also just good to see if it reflects back, because a lot of my stuff I say I don't think is typical advice, it's just something I've learned, and it's also just interesting to hear if people maybe, disagree. So, but either way, I do appreciate that there are some people that would find some of what I'm saying useful. So, all right, let's see what we got here. Let's see what else we got. I'm active U.S. Army for 2 years. My dad isn't very supportive. Do you have any thoughts that help bring us closer? He doesn't talk much. I love him to death. And try talking to him. He doesn't acknowledge me. So here's something that's important, is that it's not always about the words. Can you sit in quiet space with a person and connect with them in quietness? That's a hard thing to do. Silence is hard, right? Like, I'm just going to be silent for a second and watch what happens, right? Right, if I keep doing that, people will start dropping. So I won't keep doing it. But, silence is hard for us. There's something that goes in our mind that we need the constant stimulation of talk. We need the constant stimulation of thoughts. Try quieting your mind for a few minutes. Try meditating and see what happens. So we humans have a real issue with quiet. So the first thing I would encourage is, first of all, look back and just see if that's how your dad relates. Through not necessarily talking, he might not really have anything to say, so you might have to carry the conversation. But the first thing is just, talking it out with him and just saying, hey dad, I noticed this. Be curious. And this is just a good like life lesson. When someone's doing something that, is kind of bothering us, be curious about it. Go into that curious place and no judgment. Just say, hey, I noticed this. What's that about? Don't make any assumptions. And you might be surprised that someone will give you an answer that really makes a lot of sense, and you didn't even think about. So, and the other thing would be if you have an option for video chat while you're deployed. I don't know if that's an option or not. Sometimes that can be a little helpful. Some people aren't phone people. Just they have trouble on the phone. So, kind of look in that and ask if, maybe that's some of that going on. And then if you're, and the other thing is you mentioned he's not very supportive. I would tell you that, that some people haven't been taught how to be supportive, right? We take it for granted. But sometimes we aren't raised with supportive parents, so we don't know how to be supportive to our kids. And it might be that you just need to say, hey dad, you know what? When you're quiet, and this is actually a good technique for talking to people. When you're quiet, I feel this, could you please do that? Right? That's it's called, I have a book on it I was just reading the other day on nonviolent communication, which I don't know if he calls it nonviolent. I mean, it is nonviolent, but it seems like the word violent always seems kind of violent to me. Even nonviolent sounds violent. So, so that's how it goes. When you do this, I feel this, could you do this instead? So it's kind of like, hey dad, I noticed you're quiet, and it makes me feel, I'm guessing something like that you don't care, and then you have a request. Hey, well, first of all, you have to do the curiosity, but then, once you've got to that, it's like, hey, could you talk more, or is there something we could do to make it, more comfortable? But have that hard conversation, and he might be thinking the same thing, right? And you might be surprised by what he replies. All right, so let's see what we got here. Sexual tension on the ISS, dude. That must be really hard. Let's just be honest. That must be really hard. Sex is natural. Let's just throw that out there. We can do dad sex advice. Dad sex advice. Use a condom. That's dad sex advice number 1. And then it's natural. Feels good. Do things that are natural and feel good, but do it in a healthy way. Right? Like everything in life. Eating. Exercising. Find balance. Understand that sex is not just a physical act, it's an emotional act, and understand the implications of that on yourself and on your partner. And don't take advantage of people. And don't let people take advantage of you. All right. How many partners are too many told in at one time? It's a personal decision, guys. That's like really a personal decision, right? So you got to decide for yourself. How many partners are too many total or at one time? I think that's, again, we live in this sexually stigmatized society. So, which is, in a non-sexually stigmatized society, that question probably wouldn't even be asked. And again, there's a spectrum of acceptance. So you have to figure out for yourself what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and then go with it. And give it thought. Give it your own thought, not my thought. And that's I always throw that out there, right? That at the end of the day, you got to learn to trust yourself and trust your own judgment, because your judgment is good. In fact, it's the best judgment for you that there is. And you take ideas from other people, and then you apply them however you want to, right? But don't listen to anybody, but hear everybody. and take it in, make it your own, or ignore it, whatever, right? Because we're each on our own path, and advice that we'd get at one point in the path might not be applicable to a different point in the path. And remember that also, especially if you're young. It's not a race. There's no race to success in life. There's only life. There's the moment that you're in right now. There's no other moment. There's no future. There's no past. There's only the moment you're in right now. And you can end up running, and in the process, not even be living. So make sure you're slowing down, and you're focused, and you're present. Maybe I'll do a quick exercise here. I'll show you how that works, about being present. And what I want you to do is I want you to take your attention, wherever you're sitting, and just take an item, any item. Take a pen. And I just want you to look at that pen. I want you to be aware of that pen. I don't want you to think about the pen. If you're thinking, then the exercise isn't really working. So take just a moment and try to really bring your awareness to the present and get out of your head a little bit. And do that more and more. And I think you'll find that it'll create some happiness. All right, so we got here. All right, so how does one come out to extremely homophobic parents without ruining all future relationships? That's a hard one. That's a hard one. First of all, you know more than me in the situation, right? So it's one of those kind of times when it's hard to give advice. I mean, the first question is what really ruined the relationship. And what I mean by that is not that there's going to be a temporary issue, because I'm hearing you that there will be a temporary issue. But the question is there going to be a long-term implication that it's going to really ruin? I have noticed that a lot of times parents come around to their kids. Parents go through a process too of realizing who they are and realizing that their kids aren't them. Just like kids have a process of realizing that their parents aren't them. And starting eventually as you grow older, you get to see your parents as people, right? As opposed to, just parents, whatever that means to you, right? So parents have the same realization with their kids. I'd say just talk to them, meaning hopefully you have a good relationship with them that, that they can hear you. Maybe choose the parent that you think could hear you better, and if that's perhaps an option. But I would just, I just say the only thing I'm questioning here is the assumption that it'll ruin the relationship. I think most parents want their kids to be happy. They really do. That's all they want, right? So, the problem with maybe a homophobic parent would be that, if you're in an environment where, the parents might be embarrassed by you, right? And they're kind of ego-driven. So then that's gonna hurt things, because of that ego drive. And that's something they won't even be aware of. But it's true. It's true. But being aware of that, I think, is important. That there is that ego drive in a parent, that they want to see their kids succeed. They want to see their kid like them. And again, you got to be you at the end of the day. And also I tell you don't need your parents' approval, right? So, and there is some aspect to this, which is, look, no one says you have to come out to your parents, right? If you really believe it's going to ruin your relationship, what do they need to know? Meaning, who cares? Who cares what? It's none of their business, really. Like, it's a non-issue, right? It's a non, it's just not. It's a non-issue to So the first thing I would say is, and again, maybe you need your parents' approval, right? So there's some aspect of that that you need your parents' approval, and so you desire their approval. But you got to be realistic, and maybe they can't give you that approval because that's not where they are. And so, yeah, so I don't know if those are some helpful thoughts on it. There's no one right answer for any of these things. There are potentially a lot of right answers. So, yeah, so I'll just throw that out there. Well, thank you for the helpful pro awards. Appreciate that. So yes, I'm a dad. We got, why do dads care about thermostats so much? I didn't know that we did. To be honest. So, in fact, it seems to me that mostly the women in my life have cared about thermostats. Oh, I got you. Oh, so wait a second. So okay. So I wasn't sure if you were kind of complaining that guys are like, oh, let's turn down the thermostat. Yeah. So I'll tell you why. And again, you got to understand the perspective of a dad, right? Of the working dad. We work our ass all day to make money for our family, and then, things cost money, and so electrical. And that's a good example of something where, as a kid, we just don't appreciate what the electric bill can be, right? And again, because we're kids, we're not putting it, right? But it costs real money. So, so that's, I think, where it's at, where it's kind of like, I want to make sure that I have enough money at the end of the month to make sure my family's cared for. So, so there's some aspect of that. Or let's just not waste, right? There's an aspect of wasting as well. All right. So let's see what we got here. How to restart a relationship with an abusive dad? I'm glad everyone likes my dad answers. This is very fulfilling. It's a little ego fulfilling, but I appreciate that. I need that, which is why I'm here. And hey, know what you need and go for it. So how to restart a relationship with an abusive dad? It's a hard question. It's a really hard question. How to restart a relationship with an abusive dad? Well, it has to be on your own terms. That's the first thing I throw out there. And you have to ask yourself, what do you really want to get out of that, right? What are you looking for out of that relationship? The first thing I just warn you of is, and again, anytime I use the word abuse, I'll be talking about either physical or emotional abuse. You can't be in a relationship with someone who's abusive to you. That's dad advice. If they're truly abusive to you, you can't be in a relationship with them. There is no relationship, you understand? Because if they're abusive, a relationship is you're in a relationship back and forth. It's a two-way street. Any relationship. So if there's abuse, there's no relationship. Now, you might need something from your dad, and and I think you have to know what you want and know what you get out of it. And honestly, that's a really good kind of therapist twist. That I would say that's the kind of question you go to a therapist and say, help me out here on how to decline the call there. Help me out on how to figure out what this is. Anytime there's abuse, first of all, look, I love therapy. That's the first thing that I'd throw out there, is that everybody should take advantage of therapy. Especially, I'm talking in the U.S., and that's the first thing, is that there's seems to be a stigma. I don't understand why. We don't have a problem going to the doctor, right? Why there has to be some stigma around therapy. It's not a logical thing, but the reality is it's there. So the first advice I would throw out there is, to everybody is, find a therapist. I talked about this yesterday. People do sliding scales. Like, don't let money be a factor. In America, we live in our heads, and there's a lot of messed up societal stuff that we need to fix, and take the opportunity to fix those things, because they'll hold you back in life, and we don't want to have anything holding us back, right? Isn't that the goal? Is that we should be able to be free? Freedom's what we're all searching for, right? Even more than happiness, in a way, it's freedom. And the only way to find freedom is through working out the stuff in your head. So anyway, that's a whole bunch of that. All right. In my opinion, sometimes talking about stuff makes it worse. All right. Let me talk to that for a minute. I look like Epstein. I think that too. It's horrible, but I think you're right. I said that to my girlfriend. She didn't really care for that. Anyway, so sometimes talking about it makes it worse. So here's the challenge I'd give you, is that when you get when you get to that point and you're talking it through, there's fear that gets involved. And this is just something I found, like whenever I've gotten really close to things that are my breakthrough moments, it gets really, really fearful. And you can see it, right? You can see like, oh my God, I can't get past this. It's like a wall in front of me. And then what happens is you just kind of walk through it, and you get this cathartic relief from it. So think about really trying to keep pushing. And I think that I know it's scary, right? Because these are scary things. They're scary things that happen to us. But sometimes what we find is that it's not as scary as we think it is, right? And that's what a therapist can help us kind of think through, is really understanding it, more than we already do. All right, so what else we got here? How do you speak to your dad if he's not a touchy-feely and very traditional masculine person? It's a good question. So first of all, let's talk about masculinity, femininity for a minute. I don't know, how much time do we have here? Got 8 minutes. I'll talk about that for a minute. And again, it always goes back to society, right? And realizing that masculinity and femininity, they don't exist except for something we've made up. They're social constructs we've made up. So there's no such thing as being masculine. There's no such thing as being feminine. And I think that's really important to remember. And again, it's not speaking to your specific question. The first question would be, that I would kind of throw out there is, let me think about that question a little bit more. If he's a traditionally masculine person, how do you speak to your dad? He's not touchy-feely. I think what you might find is that he actually is more in touch with his emotions than you realize. I've met a lot of guys in my life, and nobody, and again, I get the touchy-feely part, right? He's traditionally masculine, but what's going on inside is often not exactly what's going on the outside. So that's the first thing I'd throw out there is maybe look at that perspective and ask yourself, is there more going on the inside than you might give him credit for? Because most people are all the same, right? I mean, that's what I find about people in general in life, and I think that's important, is that we're all kind of the same. We're all absolutely different, but we're all kind of the same. And we all want love. We all want acceptance. We might create a bravado around us, but it's not real. The real is what's inside. So, and the other thing is, honestly, just, that sounds like, you can probably ask your dad and say, look, how do you deal with emotions? Like bring up some of these topics and see what he says. Talk to your mom. Probably, I'd swear I'd start with that kind of thing is, hey mom, is dad dad doesn't seem very emotional, but what's he like on the inside? Because your mom will know, right? Or his girlfriend or whoever that might be. Because there's somebody he's expressing himself to. So that'd be the first thing. I would think just challenge the belief that he's so masculine that he can't really understand. All right. So we got, thank you for the platinum and the gold. Wow, that's pretty amazing. I've never got gold before, so that's pretty awesome. Now we got some more time here too, so I guess I'll keep going a little bit. Let me see here. And I just lost the comments here. All I got right now is talk about dad sneakers. You know what? I'll be honest. I'll talk about dad sneakers. Absolutely. Yeah, I got it. I'm rocking a pair of what's it? New Balance. New Balance used to be like the ugliest shoes, and then they got cool, and I think they're not cool anymore. But yeah, I got a pair of Keens. Actually, I'm a flip-flop guy. So here's the thing. Here's what happens with dads as they get older. I'm not even that old of a dad. I'm in my 40s. Is that they fuck up their feet. So I've worn my flip-flop. I like to travel. That's my thing. It's to travel. And I've worn these flip-flops around, Europe and all over the place. And what happens in the process is you walk on all these cobblestones thinking your feet are like 20-year-old feet, and they're not anymore, and you just fuck them up. So what happens though is, and it's really unfortunate, so now I got to just throw on a pair of sneakers, or I got some hiking boots too I can do, but something about letting the air flow through just feels good. So yeah, I've been rocking some New Balance and Merrells. It's kind of my go. But absolutely foot prisons. That's exactly what shoes are, right? We want to be free in life, right? That's what we want. Yeah. All right. What do I think about the protests? So look, I'll be honest. I'm trying not to pay a lot of attention to the protests. And when I was a kid, I'll tell you why. There's a lot of anger in the world. I'm going to go back to dad advice. Talk about anger. I'm talking about creating a safe space for you to live in, for yourself, for yourself. I think the best thing we can do is vote in a couple months to create change. And I think that social action is key, and I think that the younger generation is who it falls to. It historically always has fallen to the younger generation. And that's because by the time you get to be my age, you get less idealistic. And it's just kind of the nature of the world. And so I'd encourage each and every one of you to lead the way for the next generation. And I'll try to be a good steward along with you. So there's a lot of anger in this world. In America, there's always anger. There's always angry people. And I feel that anger. And it bothers me. It bothers me to be around anger. So I don't listen to news. I don't listen to, any kind of, I think is very manipulative and creates a lot of anxiety. I think there's, a lot of peaceful protests going on right now. I think there's a lot of people that are going to protest with their vote. And I do believe there's time, by the way. I do believe there's time for violent protests. It's just that it's a stage till you get to that. And I think right now it's more just, there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And I think it comes from a place of hurt. And it hurts me to watch them kind of act from a place of hurt. Do I do this anywhere else? No, just here. Just here. And I'm happy to do this. As long as there are people that'll listen, I'm happy to share what I've learned. Because it's meaningful to me. And if it's meaningful to you, then I'm absolutely happy. And I'll repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And part of it also is look, I'd love, if you got questions on what I'm saying or you want to challenge what I'm saying, I'd love that. Because I'd love to, really have the opportunity to challenge my own thoughts. So let's see what we got here. Let's see some other questions. I do this anywhere else? YouTube, Twitch, yeah. Okay. My favorite music. I you know what? I like to write my own music. I hear, and I've done that a couple times. on here. Hasn't gone all that well, but I like acoustic guitar, kind of singer-songwriter stuff. So hundreds of years of oppression, and you don't think the stage has been reached. How much more injustice needs to happen? So here's the thing that I want, I kind of how I see it. There's always injustice. There's always injustice. It's where we are at a human nature perspective. Go back and think about societally. Every society you think of, going back, there's been horrendous injustice. I would argue, and I don't have facts on this, but I think that at this time in history, right? So, and again, I'd love to see things change, today. I'd love it. I'd love us to all be approaching each other with an open heart, and and seeing every individual as an individual, and not making assumptions. Would be amazing, and not creating judgment. But I think if we look historically of where we are now in 2020, compared to where we were, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, I think societally we've progressed. And it's a slow process, but I do believe that the net society now is better than it's ever been. I can't back that up scientifically. It's a gut. And I think I've read stuff like that before. So, and I think our job right now is, look, we should all be out, let's be honest, we should all be out knocking on doors and convincing people to vote, right? That's where the fight needs to be right now. And it's not, it's embarrassing. It's scary to me that all the protesters, myself included, I should be doing it. I'm just being lazy, let's be honest. Just like anybody else is not knocking on all their neighbors' doors and saying, hey, you know what? There's a vote coming up. And you know what? You really, maybe I can't convince you to change your mind, but if you're on my side, come on, let's make sure we're voting, right? And keep in mind that everything that happens in this country is all of our faults, right? So it's not like we're all touching each other, right? So I think that's a really key thing to remember, is that we're responsible for our neighbors, because it's like traffic, right? You know how you get into traffic and you're like, oh man, I hit traffic. What you realize is you're part of the traffic. And so the same thing, happens in society. We're all part of the traffic. So what can we do? We can try to make the world a little bit of a better place. Okay, let's see what else we got here. And I got about 3 more minutes, and then I got to run. And absolutely, run for local offices. Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna do 3. I got 3 minutes. I'll talk about religion. There was someone who actually asked me like a question that I wanted to answer before, about a girl who lost her dad. Yeah, I can't find it now. I'm sorry. I'll try to do this again sometime. Oh, okay. Yeah. What general advice would you give girls who lost their father at a young age? I can't help but to feel I missed out on lessons that only dads teach. So look, I'm sorry that you lost your father. Sorry that you lost someone who's close to you and could have been in your life. I don't know that I agree that there are lessons that only dads teach. I think everybody teaches different things. Yeah, I think that's another one of those societal things, where, right, what's a dad lesson, really, right? So it's coming from a certain perspective. I think the loss is the things that only your dad could have taught you, right? Because he was unique, and only he could have taught you whatever it was that he did teach you, and that's a tremendous loss. But it's and I know a lot of single mothers by choice, not a lot of single fathers by choice, but and those are all kids that are growing up without dads as well, and I don't think hey, they're going to miss out on all this dad wisdom, right? They'll miss out on having 2 parents that love them, raise them. But there's nothing unique to dad wisdom. It's just another caring person in your life, and who will set some good examples and set some bad examples, because that's what parents do. They do a little good and a little bad. So and I would say though is bring guys into your life, as mentors perhaps. Take that opportunity to find people. There's always people willing to be a mentor. People are, and that's just in general in life. No matter where you are, find the people that you can reach out to and just say, hey, would you mind just being my mentor? We'll get together, once a month and just chit chat, and I can learn from your advice. And I think you'll find that a lot of people are really willing to do that. So I'm going to run because I have a meeting and need to attend to. If I've made an impact on you personally today, just because I think it'll help me keep doing this, if you don't mind just saying thank you in the comments, before I go, I think that really will help me see the value of what I'm doing, and also helps me see my own value, if I'm honest, and I'll always try to be honest when I'm doing these things, and I'll be happy to come back and do this again, potentially tomorrow around 5 o'clock. So, be happy to, talk through kind of these dad things and give some life lessons and life guidance of things I've learned along the way that might have been helpful to me as I've passed through life. But either way, thank you all for joining me. I really actually was quite the nice crowd, and thank you all for the kind words and awards along the way. And until next time, understand that you're beautiful and that you can do anything you want in this world. So, cheers.